Hey everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Talks with Trav. I am your host, Travis Diamond. As always, our goal with each episode is to offer real tips and stories around different things that most of us don't get the chance to talk about to help you improve the quality of your life and the life of those around you. Well, you guys are in for a treat today. There's a couple of things that are going to be different about this episode. The first thing, instead of me just talking about one specific thing, one certain topic, and diving in on that, it's going to be more of a free flow, if you will. And that is because I'm going to be having the first guest that I've ever had on my podcast. I'm super excited for that. And I'm sure many of you are, because let's face it, who wants to hear the same voice for 30 minutes to an hour? I know I don't like just talking into the microphone all the time, so it'll be a good break for me too. And honestly, this is something that I'm looking at doing going forward for at least most of the episodes. So, with that being said, the person that I have with me today is none other than my wife, Morgan. I'm super excited for you to be here, and I really look forward to hearing everything that you have to talk about today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here and my first podcast, but also
your first podcast. That's
to be
exciting.
doing it with you as well. So that's awesome. And a little bit about me. I graduated from UWF, University of West Florida, with a bachelor's in psychology and a minor in human resources, and I'm currently working on my master's degree in health promotion. So that's been wonderful. And
I want to add two other accolades that are pretty impressive. First of all, she's got a pretty stellar husband. Me, I'm a little biased, but she's also a mother. She has Rylan, 4-year-old son, and we have one on the way, baby Emerson, that'll be here in February. We're super excited for that. So we can also not just college graduate and future masters and all of that. We can also add on there top-notch mother and wife. So I just wanted to give you the credit where it's due, because I know that's not easy for some of us to take in. But yeah, today we're the reason we're doing this is we're just gonna have a conversation about what led us to where we are. We're doing this because we see so many people we know and people that we don't really know necessarily, but through social media and all of that, we see a ton of people that want to do something different, even if it's not like change their career and make millions of dollars. Just they want to feel like they're doing something beneficial to society. And in all honesty, that's one of the reasons that I started the podcast to begin with, is because I'm like, there's so much information out there, but there's also so many people that not only don't have access to the information, but they don't even know the information exists at all to get access to it.
And I think that it's also very important to note, especially over the past 2 years, we're going on 2 years now of, the COVID pandemic. When people are stressed out, it is very hard to process information. So anything that you're trying to be better on, or find stress management techniques, it can be very overwhelming to sit down and try and find the information that you need to overcome that.
Yeah, it's like analysis paralysis. You have so many options and so many choices, you don't know what to do or where to go. So yeah, and she was talking about stress management because we just launched our stress management course, which we're super excited for, because we know the impact that stress has on everyone's life. It's how did you explain it? A universal experience?
Yeah.
It's something that we all deal with, no matter how rich or poor or white or black or gay or straight or whatever. We all have our stresses in different capacities. And like I said, it's just a lack of information, and as Morgan said, it's the overwhelm. So what we decided to do was take the platform we had with Talks with Trav, and mind you, I've also spent the better part of a decade sharing personal development strategies and tips and things like that through my social media, just never in a structured form. So yeah, we took the platform with Talks with Trav, and we decided that we're going to make some resources to really help people de-stress, and at the very least start the process of getting into a better place. But not just that, but like we said, we see so many people that just want to do something different. They don't know where to go. There's this uncomfortable feeling of the unknown. So we want to kind of share some of the struggles that we've gone through doing this, in the hopes that it, one, helps you see a road path, a path or a road that you can take, the roadmap, if you will, on how to start working towards what you want. But two, so you can understand that struggle happens. Lack of confidence is real, especially when it comes to the unknown. In fact, a lot of that uncertainty breeds stress. So yeah, I'm just, I would like to think a fairly solid ability to articulate things in a way that most people can understand. And, Morgan has this in-depth knowledge of things to explain it to me in a way that gives me a much deeper understanding. So with the two of us working together, like, in our mind, we can reach so many more people.
Yeah. The different perspectives, and
right.
Also, just having that male and female perspective.
Absolutely. I think that's a big part too. Because as a man, I'm less inclined, through no conscious decision, but if you look at my bookshelves or look at what I listen to, there's not many females on there. There are some, and I will say one of the most names that I recommend the most for people is Mel Robbins, who's a female, but outside of that, there's not a lot of them, and vice versa. If you look at a lot of women who are going through personal development or going through anything, they're going to typically turn to other women to, so we're trying to be as all-encompassing as possible. But I just want to share a little bit about where I started with my personal development journey, and I believe I might have been a year into it when we met.
Mm-hmm.
I just, if I'm honest, it started because I learned the concept of getting paid based on the value that I bring to the marketplace. When I was 18 or so, I joined a direct selling company, a multi-level marketing company, and say what you will about that industry or anything, I don't really care. No, I didn't get the BMW or the $1 million, but what I got was something so much more substantially beneficial. I got introduced to the world of personal development. I had no idea that there were books and courses and all of that. There's an entire industry that you could go and learn to be a better person. In college certainly was an option for me. So I was like, oh, I can get paid. The better person I become, the bigger the asset I am to a company or an industry, the more money I can make. So it was purely financial at first. And then my life I had to go from learning how to be really good professionally to be really good personally, because my life kind of took a hard left turn and crashed a little bit. But, just the desire to be better, to earn more income, and to enjoy a higher quality of life is where it started. And then, like I said, it just kind of took a left turn to where I was like, wait, I'm broken, so I have to fix me before I can ever help anyone fix themselves. And that's where the psychology started coming in. That's where mm-hmm. I started learning about the inner workings and the importance of things of that nature.
Yeah, that's very important. I've seen you go through so many books. I mean, I'm looking at a bookshelf right now. We have over 500 books combined together of just the self-development and psychology. And it's, you say that you have the informal education. When it comes to personal development, and that, can be a drawback of, going out into this market. But there's really not a niche for that within college itself. College is so structured, and it's
it's structured to create workers.
It is, and there's different opinions on college and its weight in today's society, and if it's the whole racket scheme and stuff. But I think what you did, having the discipline and the motivation to do that yourself through the books, through the courses that you've taken, through the seminars, through talking with people online, that almost holds a little bit more weight, I feel, than the traditional 4-year college education.
Right. So I want to point out a couple of things. One, I had to go to summer school to get my high school diploma. College was never, not even for a second, an option for me for a multitude of reasons, but the biggest because I made the decision to choose for it to not to be an option. I didn't see the point in it. I felt and still in some capacities feel like it is nothing but a scam. And there's a lot of actual data to back some of the things that I would talk about, but this is not the episode for that. And on the flip side, my wife is working towards accomplishing her master's. So not only did she do the 4 years of the bachelor's degree, which, if you go to college, that's the standard, right? The 4 years, the bachelor's. She's taking it a step further to get a level of mastery in a particular subject matter that just so happens to be the same one that I have devoted the last 7 years or so of my life to mastery as well. But not mastery from a sense of knowing all the technical terms and being able to explain that this particular chemical in our body does this as a response to that, which is the reason that we feel this when all of this happened. Like, I can't do that necessarily. She can. But I understand, like, for example, with cortisol, I can't exactly explain to you the chemical reaction or response that cortisol has to stressful events. But I know that cortisol is one of the major stress hormones, and it's directly responsible for the level of stress you experience in situations. So like, I would agree. What I'm getting at is I would agree with you that I don't have a general education in the sense of college algebra and literature and writing and those things. But when we're talking about the subject matter of your mindset and what I would consider personal development, I would be very confident sitting down with just about any person and having a conversation with them.
Oh, no yeah. And, while we're on the topic of, like, education, the first 2 years of college are, and I understand you want to establish those study habits, and it's a growing process.
Right.
The self-development of, learning how to study and learning how to keep up with...
The well-rounded.
Yeah. But it's kind of just like those throwaway years. Like, I will never use the math that I struggled through and, into hours of tutoring and stuff like that. So, I mean, really, when you look at it from what we are trying to put out there in the world, I think that you have a very valid background in the education that you have sought out for.
Hey, I know I do because I've experienced the results. That's the way I feel about it. Until recently, I've never done any of this learning or taken these actions for anyone other than Travis.
Yeah.
So
I think it's very powerful.
That's how you have to do it, because let's be real. Hearing the same basic concept story over and over and over again, written by different people, gets monotonous.
Yeah.
But if you can find those little nuggets, there might be 10 sentences out of a 50,000 word book that can really make a difference. But you have to look for them. And when you find them, it's profound. But if you're not devoted in every sense of the word to that, they're easy to miss. And, I, as you know, spent several hours of my day devoted to doing that for years. Just every waking moment, basically. I used to sit at work and have to spend 6 hours a day working spreadsheets and reports and checking accounts. And as I'm going through these things, I was let me clarify, I was incredibly confident and comfortable in my position with my job, and it was a very easy skill for me to master in doing all the checking and things of that nature. But as I'm going through all these accounts, making sure all the numbers are right and everything's accurate, I would listen to various things from, any type of Tony Robbins to Carl Jung to just all over the place. Anything that I could get that could help me get a better understanding of mindset and how to fix myself. Because again, that's the whole reason I stuck with it, is every time things were going good, something would break bad and I would have to fix another area. I'd have to find that insight on how I could help myself in this other area. And it just became a lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, as Travis was explaining, we have just created a course on stress management and very excited about it. And I guess to tell a little bit of my background, I have gone through the formal education process, and still going through it. I think health promotion has been great because it's really helped me understand how to do the research, how to figure out our target audience and figure out what the needs are from that population, and be able to put out information that I feel is actually going to benefit them. But honestly, this is not where I wanted to end up in the beginning. I remember it was like 12-ish. I don't know. I was very privileged to be able to see a therapist. I had a rough childhood, and Miss Pam, she was amazing, and actually come to find out later in life, I was one of her first clients, which I find really, really special, because she changed my whole life. Like, she changed the trajectory of my life and gave me this passion to just want to help, because coming to her so broken and so confused and so lost in life, and even though I wasn't able to fully understand what she was telling me, she still gave me this hope and this acceptance that I just clung to. And so from 12 on, I wanted to be a child psychologist, so bad, in my bones. That is all I could think about anytime that a psychology class was offered, or something. So sociology, anything of this sort, I was in it. I loved it. I just could not get enough of it. And I love understanding other people's pains, and just understanding the biological base of it. And you get this whole different look of humanity. And going through college and understanding our healthcare system and getting a better understanding of the limitations of that just kind of broke me. It was really hard to get through this disappointment of what our healthcare system really truly is. Because let's go back a little bit. My whole goal in life, and I know this is so grandiose and way beyond my power, but I wanted to live in a small town. I wanted to have my own private practice. And I used to draw this up on poster boards. I was so
you were visualizing. It was your vision board.
Yeah, I was so into this. I wanted to have my own little practice, and I wanted to be, and this is before I knew the difference between a psychologist, which is therapy, and a psychiatrist, which prescribes medicine, right? So I'm gonna be both. I'm gonna be able to talk to people. I want to keep that one-on-one interaction with my clients, but I also want to be able to prescribe them the medicine if they need to, if they need it. But have my own private practice, still be in control of my clients, but also be linked to local high schools or just the local schools in general. So if they had any students that were exhibiting just any behaviors that the school counselor couldn't really break or anything, they could be referred over to me, and I could come in and talk with them and all that stuff, and figure out what the best course of action would be. And then I would also this is so crazy, I also wanted to have lawyer friends. So if I ever needed the law on my side to help get a child out of an abusive situation, I would be able to do that. But then I also wanted to know families who were open to fostering children, so that if we ever did have to take a child out of a home, they would go to a safe home instead of just being put up to the state. So I had this whole entire town being ran by a mental health professional. But then to go through the education, and like I said, to really understand the limitations of the healthcare system here in America, it was really discouraging. And I was about to graduate with my bachelor's degree, and I took a stress management course, and I was going through a really rough time in my life, and it was this course saved me. the stress management course, you know, something that I paid like $1,200 for. You know, and I got the book, and it was just so straightforward on the biology, the physiology of stress, and then the techniques, both like spiritual, but also, you know, based in science. Yeah, the holistic approach.
Covering, all encompassing.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and I think that's what you had this grand scheme to have every step, every possible scenario or roadblock that could have been faced in helping a child in need. You had it drawn up in your mind to help. And that's, you know, an all-encompassing resolution. That's what you're looking for. And just, that's what the holistic approach to stress management has been. And, you know, honestly, I think that's, with the Adventure Group, the company we founded, the goal, the mission statement is to help people improve the quality of their life and the lives of those around them. Because we both have had some very hard experiences in life, and we understand how it may be easy to get this, but it's impossible to get that. And if you have this, then you can get that, but not this. And it's, like you said, the healthcare system is broken. You know,
and beyond that, the mental health care system, like, it's just.
Let me, I want to share a story. There was one time a few years ago. So some of you know, some of you don't know. If you don't know me personally, I worked for the last 6 years for one of the largest healthcare companies in the nation. I'm not going to name them. I'm not going to say which hospitals I worked at. Not because I'm talking bad about them. That's not the case at all. I just don't want to give them any shine in any capacity. That's it. My time ran its course there. Things came to an end the way they needed to, and we're all good. We're square, and it is what it is. But anyways, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was the supervisor over one of the departments, the patient accounts department. So basically everything non-medical, non-clinical. So the billing, the coding, the referrals, the registration, the payments, the payment plans, all of that. Any interactions with the insurance, processing and reprocessing denials, all of that. And one of the things I had to do every day, because we had the hospital I was at, we had such a issue getting approval for mental health treatment for the patients through the insurance, and they were trying to blame it on my department, saying we weren't getting authorization quick enough, or because patients would come in a psychotic state, my team wouldn't go, for obvious reasons, to them and say, hey, what's your insurance? How are you paying for the visit? So there was a lot of what they would call uninsured or just blank patient. We would be missing their information. So I'd have to go to these meetings every morning. And one morning I'm sitting in there, and I can't remember exactly how we got on the conversation, but one of the doctors made the comment about how the patients were just batshit crazy. And the reason we can't get approval is just because they're all drug addicts. This was the lead doctor, one of the lead doctors. I can't say lead doctor necessarily because I don't know that to be true. It's just it was the one doctor that was in there most often. This doctor was responsible for treating mental health patients. So I was a little shocked that they said this. So I say, hey, excuse me, doctor. I'm not naming names, but excuse me, doctor. There's a difference between someone that is in a drug-induced psychosis and someone that turns to drugs because they're psychotic. And of course the doctor was like, obviously I know that. I'm like, well, you're not acting like it. Like, the statement you just made implied that it's a blanket coverage and that's why everything's getting denied, and that's not the case. And while I showed with that statement that my team was not at fault, that was not my intent. My intent was to point out how the mental health provider at a major institution, mind you, was just oblivious or chose to see things from a personal lens instead of a professional lens. And that's across the board. It's such a new, subject that they don't get it. And that was one of the first experiences I had where I'm like, there's something amiss here. And, I could share 20 more stories like that where I had to go in and change this status or do that because the insurance would approve the services under this one but deny it under this one. And I mean, you're letting insurance companies dictate the treatment of the patients is essentially what's happening.
Oh my gosh, like this is one of the most frustrating things, because the stigma surrounding mental health is so distorted. Like you said,
Right.
well, these people are coming in and they're batshit crazy. Well, because they're on drugs. Like, that's not. Yes, they may be on drugs, but that's not the core cause of why they're here.
Right. Right.
There's a couple of points I want to make with what you said,
Sure.
but one of the biggest being there is no preventative mental health care within our nation at all. The only time that people go for help with their mental health is whenever it has become such a problem that it is debilitating their life, like that it is completely disrupting their life.
Right.
And that's what I think we're trying to attack with our program, and what I've gone into my master's program for. Instead of doing the child psychology, which I had set my whole life up for, when I took that stress management class and when I sat there and realized my whole life could have been changed. I could have had a completely different path if I would have had this information, this black and white information back in school, back in
Right.
public school. And it's completely doable. Like, it's something that we could implement within our education system, but has not, and it's just completely neglected. So now the stigma, anytime anyone talks about mental health, it's like, oh, well, you're a little crazy. So we're just,
It's I mean, thankfully, it's not as bad as it's getting better.
The conversations is being brought up now.
But in all honesty, and again, this is from my personal perspective, from the experiences that I've had working inside of the healthcare industry. It's a lot of there are some organizations that care deeply, and there's a lot of people within those organizations that care deeply about mental well-being.
Of course. But the limitations that they're
right, but there's a lot of them that don't take it serious. That
is true.
Only someone comes in, they're having a psychotic episode. They will keep them long enough to make sure they don't harm themselves or anyone else. Typically 3 days or less. They will prescribe the medication, tell them to go to the local community mental health place that you may or may not get an appointment in the next 6 months, and send them on their way. In none of their discharge paperwork is there anything about writing out your problems. Is there anything about mindful meditation or breathing techniques
or exercise or diet or sleep regimens?
Right. Or, there's nothing about fixing yourself. It's always the Band-Aids.
And not even that, but it's also, it's kind of like demoralizing when you go into those places, and, you've been Baker after you're there for 72 hours, when you're coming out, like, you just feel so much less of a person.
Yeah, it's dehumanizing. It's
completely.
It's almost a prison without bars and handcuffs, and you're not in an orange jumpsuit, unless, depending what color the facility clothing is.
Right.
It's you're put in at least in my experience at the facilities I've worked at, you're put in a different color outfit to identify a mental health patient versus a physical health patient. You're given the special non-slip socks. You have a security guard with you at all times. You're depressed. You're not homicidal. You're going through a bipolar episode, or in a lot of cases, it's people that just get too intoxicated. But again, they let them sober up and send them on their way. They're not like, well, man, why did you do 2 grams of meth? Let's figure out what's causing you to turn to these street drugs so hardcore. That's and again, it's a lack of resourcefulness or resources. And actually, there's a lot of companies like for-profit healthcare, for example. It's 100% a financial decision. Everything is financially driven. Every single decision that is ever made under the roof of a for-profit healthcare organization is financially driven. So if they decide not to have an extra provider or an extra therapist, it's because they can save $60,000 and the big man up top can get an extra $1 million bonus this year. You save $60,000 at every hospital you have, and you've got 200, 300, 400, however many hospitals, 80, that's compounding, and it's sad. So yeah, enough rambling about that. Like, the point of the stress management program is to kind of offer that preventative care
outside of
the
this
normal
system.
Yes, like, and if you are someone, like, I have someone close to me who just in the last couple months, in talking with them, they've decided that they've agreed to go, that they need to get some sort of therapy. It took over 2 months for them to get in to see their primary care doctor. Their insurance won't let them see a therapist without a referral from the primary care doctor. Then it's going to be another month or two before they can get their first new patient appointment with the doctor, with the therapist. And the primary doctor prescribed them an anti-anxiety medication, but didn't mention meditation, didn't mention breathing techniques, didn't mention changing his diet, didn't mention any of that. Just like, here's some medicine that you can spend more money and take, and to hold you over until you get therapy.
Right, and not to mention too, like, when primary care doctors or the practitioners are prescribing this medication, they don't tell you about the side effects,
right?
Or they just kind of like gloss over it. But on average, it takes people 3 to 4 different medications to go through, to try out before they find one that actually works. And on top of that, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on what medication you are taking, to actually take effect for you to fully experience it and to understand how it's going to affect your body and the side effects that you're going to experience.
Right.
So it's kind of counterproductive when they just like throw medicine at you, especially without the lab results and running certain tests to see what your body is able to digest and process.
It's a broken system. But the bottom line is, I'm hopeful. We're hopeful. We see the silver lining. We see more and more talking about it. We see more people doing something. And while COVID and this pandemic and the handling of this pandemic has been an incredibly divisive conversation for some ungodly reason, I don't see how two people can look at the same things when there's so many facts based, like, entrenched in everything, and come up with two different conclusions. But I get that's human nature. But what it's done is it has really opened people's eyes, not through the mainstream media, because they're not going to talk about it, but it has opened people's eyes to the importance of taking care of yourself, of that preventative maintenance, of the exercise and the stretching, the holistic approach, not just making sure you see your doctor if you can, but also eating healthier and being active and doing some cardiovascular exercise and getting sun exposure to get that vitamin D, and taking multivitamins, or all of those things are very important. And in December of last year? Yeah, December of last year I had COVID. I had no idea. The best way I can describe it is I woke up one Saturday morning. I was congested, but I'm congested every morning. I was just more congested than normal. All right, maybe the allergies are really kicking in, and like there's inflammation going on. And then I got up and I was like, dang, my body's kind of sore. I felt like I did a full body workout and slept on an uncomfortable couch. And then I had a slight headache for 2 days. That was me. Had I not, I called out of work because of the headache. It was just like one of those, every time you take a step it would throb, and I didn't want to deal with it. I had to walk a lot at work. And working in the hospital, anytime you call out because of COVID, you have to go get a COVID, or because during the pandemic you have symptoms, you have to go get a test. And I literally kissed my wife goodbye to go get my test. Because that's how certain I was that it wasn't COVID, because I believed everything I heard about how if you get COVID, basically you're going to be on a ventilator. And I say that to say this. What I started doing about 3 months before COVID is I started taking multivitamins every day. I started exercising a little bit more. I started eating healthier. I started getting my vitamin D. And if I'm honest, had I been in the shape I was in before I started doing all of those things, when I got and gotten COVID, I would have probably been a lot worse. But who knows? Who knows? I've seen, heard stories of incredibly healthy people being down and out from it. But, the point of me saying all of that is, had I not made the decision to do that preventative care and just hope that I don't get it, I would have been in worse shape, most likely. Can I confirm that for sure? No, because there's no time machine. But, and that's what we're trying to do with this, is just offer a way for people to have that mental multivitamin, if you will. How to get the treatment. If, I'm stressed out today, what should I do? I'm feeling anxious right now. How should I handle that? Like, what can I do about it? Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit depressed. Now, I'm not saying that anything we have to offer can, should, and would replace in any capacity any type of professional guidance or advice. That's not what we're trying to do. But what we are trying to do is offer resources that have been proven through personal experience and through scientific data and study to be beneficial and helpful overall for your mental and physical well-being.
It's kind of like a supplement. Like,
yeah.
Of course, I'm not a therapist. We are not here to replace the recommendations of any doctor. But even, we talked about the healthcare system, even when you go to a therapist, unless you're going to a holistic therapist, you're not going to have them talk to you about your sleep regimen, your eating habits,
right.
your exercise, and the vitamins you take. They're not going to give you that holistic approach. So by us putting this information out there, we hope to help those who are not in therapy, who are waiting, for those who are in therapy, and just like as a supplement, help friends and family, just to really put that out there, because the human experience can be so damaged by stress. And if you're stressed for a long time, the chronic stress, it just completely deteriorates your physical health in so many ways,
and mental. It deteriorates you in every aspect. Emotionally, mm-hmm. Like, you have a shorter patience fuse, if you will. You're more irritable. Mm-hmm. When you're sad, you're sadder. It's like the highs are higher, the lows are lower. It's emotional instability is what
right.
it creates.
Well, the chronic stress, that can lead to the DSM diagnosis, where you have the depression or the
right.
generalized anxiety and stuff like that. And if you do have one of those diagnoses, the hard reality is you have 15 years off of your life, unless you are proactive and you really try to counterbalance the hormones and the physiological response that your body has been put under because
right.
of the stress. So
yeah, that's a good point. And I don't, if I'm honest, I don't think many people are aware of that, because I wasn't until we started researching. I started doing my own research to create this program with you. Years are taken. The fact that 7 of the leading causes of death in the United States are directly connected to chronic stress. Mm-hmm. Approximately 80% of all primary care physician visits are due to stress-related illness or complaints.
Yep. It's a really big problem, and one that really, even though the conversation is being brought to the table, it's still not enough to combat the depth of this
right.
problem. But
if I can be Mr. Silver Lining,
yeah.
The good news about the vast majority of these types of stress-related issues is they are self-induced, which means they can be overcome with action.
Yes, and I agree with that, but I also do want to point out that poverty is one of the biggest indicators for mental health, and that's something that is completely systematic within our society, within our nation, and
Yeah, there's no denying that people who grow up in poverty experience far worse
even middle class, having to work paycheck to paycheck.
Well, so I wouldn't
the
consider that
stress
middle
of that.
class. I guess that depends on how you're defining middle class. Because to me, middle class isn't living paycheck to paycheck. That's still being in poverty. That's essentially modern day slavery. You're working, you're getting paid just enough to take care of yourself well enough to go back to work.
They say that is like to be able, to rent a place, to have food, to have health insurance. Like that's your middle class.
That's what we're defining as middle class? Is that like, I'm blown away by that.
I don't have the statistics.
I'm like,
but yes.
To me, because I don't know what the official classifications are. I know what poverty looks like. I'm familiar with that, And if I would like to think I know what a middle class looks like, I have a very unique upbringing where
that's like upper middle class nowadays. Like to not go paycheck to paycheck, but to still have a little bit of like extra money. Yeah, no, it's
wow.
It's really,
you learn something new every day.
Really
that's crazy.
Intense.
But yes, that is a completely different issue that it directly ties into what we're talking about 100%.
I think that it's important to keep in mind because,
absolutely, you have to take it to your own personal understanding. Right. People still, as someone who's been in poverty and still made the decision, instead of to buy the healthy thing, I got the quick and easy thing, or instead of to save this money to do this, I went and bought the newest that. And that's what you're taught when you live in that system. You're taught that if you get made fun of if you don't have the nicest things,
of course,
and you can't afford it, But I'm mind blown by that. I had no idea that was considered middle class. I don't like that reclassification. How are you going to reclassify it to fit your which political party did that?
No.
I'm just kidding.
No,
but no, in all seriousness, stress is a huge issue. It's one of many, but it's the one that is all encompassing. Everyone experiences the universal experience. And I do want to talk about the podcast because, like she said, we really want to offer an all encompassing service to really help as many people as we can. And we have tons of free resources out there, and the podcast is just one of them. In fact, I kind of chose the order of the things that I talked about to kind of set a path to help people see, just with the titles of my episodes, what steps need to be taken. Like the very first episode I did was about taking the uncomfortable action, the thought of it, the feelings of it, what to expect, what you should do, how to go about it, like all of those things from my personal experience. The next one, is having clarity, like being clear on what you want. And I don't have them in front of me, but I just went through it. And then the third one is like, once you have clarity, you have to set the goals. And once you have the goals, you have to develop the discipline. And once you have that, you have to start having the communication. And, I just went on. And that's what we want people to get out of this. And also we want to talk about like some of the challenges that we faced in creating the podcast and creating the program. Because I'm not gonna sit here and if you've listened to any of my episodes, I'm a straight shooter. It's one of the most daunting things I've ever done was sit down and record that first podcast. I've spoken in front of well over 150 people. I have performed in athletic competitions with hundreds of people, if not 1,000 plus people watching. But sitting down and pouring my heart out about a subject matter with no one to correct, no one to give me feedback or anything, and just putting that into the universe and letting it sit there forever, it's there forever now. Once it's on the internet, it's there forever. And it's on 17 different platforms. Yeah. Not literally, I think it's like 8, but still. How long did I tell you I was going to make a podcast before I actually did?
Oh, it was a while.
A year?
Yeah.
I mean, I told so many people. I had a buddy of mine, like before we moved out here, I told him, I said, hey man, I'm going to do a podcast. And he's a real good hype man. He was like, oh dude, you absolutely should. I'm down. Travis, you got it, man. You always give solid advice, all of that. And I'm like, yeah, people really need it. I'm going to do it. And like, a couple months later, my wife and I moved to Tallahassee. Although we weren't quite married at the time. We weren't even we got engaged out here. We weren't married or engaged at the time either. We were still dating, and I told her the same thing. And like 6 months after we moved out here, that friend hit me up and was like, "Yo, bro, how's your podcast going?" And I was like, it is but a dream. It's still a thought, and it wasn't because I was just so overwhelmingly busy. Although I was busy. And I had a lot going on mentally, but it was limiting beliefs. It was self-doubt. It was the analysis paralysis. I spent probably 20 hours, realistically 20 hours thinking about a name.
Yeah.
And a friend of ours, Audrey, she came up with this, and she was like, we were standing in her kitchen, and we were just talking about life and different things, and I said something. And she was like, "You really need to put together a program." And she was encouraging me to help the youth, work towards the youth. And she's like, "You can call it Talkswithtrav." And then 4 months go by, and then I come up with the podcast, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll use that." So it'd been sitting there the whole time, Talkswithtrav, but I never pulled it up. Yeah. And I just sat there for hours thinking about it. But and I want to hear from your perspective what it was like to see me tell you I'm going to do something and start going towards it and then never going, and then finally getting past those hurdles and publishing that first episode. I'm curious from your perspective, how that was.
I definitely, I like to see all the perspectives of a person and what they're going through. So it was just I saw that you had this passion, and I believe in you. I know what you're capable of, and the way that you communicate with people. I had so much faith that once you started, it was something that would just take off. But it was hard because you also had the stress of the hospital that you were working at, and the frustration of that, the society setup of just the 8 to 5 workplace, and then everything else that was placed on you, the responsibilities that every day it was another one.
Let's not sugarcoat it. I was on call 24/7.
24/7.
Yeah. And when I asked for assistance from my boss, that asshole laughed in my face.
Very much so. So it was I was really sad because I knew that you had all this potential, and I knew that you have this very big message to give to the world, to give to your friends and your family and everyone else beyond that. But the stress that you were under and the self-limiting beliefs that came from those stressors prevented you from moving forward. So it wasn't until we made, a huge life change where you were able to kind of pull it together and, start. But it's been very inspiring to watch you go through this process. And, I think that whenever we venture out in something new in life, you want to just be good at it. You pick up knitting and you're like, oh, okay, this is going to be great. And you get all this stuff and you sit down and it's hard. It is so hard.
Yeah.
And you're just okay, well, I'm done, or I'll worry about that later. And then you never get back to it. But to see you start, fail, get back up, try again, that is success in itself. No matter how many people listen, no matter how many people you reach in the beginning, the fact that you kept trying was greater than anything.
Sure. And I'll say, I think I have 4 or 5 first episodes recorded. Yeah. I wasn't satisfied with any of them. And in fact, I wasn't satisfied with the one that I published. I would listen to it and I would just cringe. But then I you listen to it, and you're like, oh, it's beautiful. It's great. And I'm looking at it, I realized I was looking at it from a perspective of audio quality, and then I was comparing it to some of the podcasts that I listen to where people have over 1,000 interviews and episodes with people, and I was monotone, and I'm like, I didn't talk about the right things, or I didn't talk about it enough, and then I put it out there, and I got fairly good feedback. Like, I didn't get any bad feedback, but people were like, "Hey, good job. It's good stuff." Like, I had a bunch of people like sit down and listen to that, and although I haven't had anyone necessarily reach out to me and say, "Hey, because of your episode, I took uncomfortable action," um, there have been a lot of people that I know that listen to that episode and that I know follow me that are doing things now that they wouldn't have done before. And in no way, shape, or form am I trying to say it's because of that episode. But what I will say it is because that they got that information from someone somewhere that encouraged them to do it. And even if it wasn't from me, that's awesome. And I do want and hope to be that voice for people. And it's never been a let's do this podcast so we can get advertising dollars, because like I have one potential sponsor, and that's through the platform that I use for my services. Like, and that's cool. Like, I hit a point where my podcast has enough viewers to where people like this company Anchor is willing to potentially pay me to advertise for them. I haven't put it on there yet. I'm still debating it. I don't know if I want to, but that's not the point. The point, what I'm getting at, is it's never been about the millions of downloads or anything like that, because if my episodes never exceed 1,000 people that listen to them, but in each episode one person has their life positively impacted, then I'm succeeding.
Well, I think so. Brene Brown, her whole subject is the power of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I think that everyone has something positive that they can bring to society, but it's those self-limiting beliefs that prevent them from doing so. But once you get past like being vulnerable and knowing that what you have to say, even though it may not resonate with the whole entire population, it's going to resonate with some people.
Right.
And then when someone changes their life, it's not this whole like grandiose thing. It is literally one moment when their perspective is changed, when they have that shift.
It's that paradigm
mindset.
shift.
Yeah. So
yeah, when something, I want to go back to what you were talking about earlier, and it ties directly to what you're talking about with vulnerability now, and it ties into stress. So when you said earlier, we tend to want to start new things and be good at them.
Yeah.
But when we realize we're not good, we get frustrated, throw our hands
Very
up.
much so.
That's a vulnerable position. It's uncomfortable. And like you hear the sayings, you have to leave your comfort zone to learn new things. And it makes sense. You not only do you have to leave your comfort zone, you have to go to an area of vulnerability to learn new things, because if you're always right, you're never growing. You're never learning new things. So I think there's probably some data to back this. Maybe there's not, I don't know. But people tend to be more willing to suffer knowing what they're going to get in that suffering than they are to take a chance to get rid of the suffering. It's
for sure.
Just like if people who tend to stay in abusive relationships or in shitty jobs, they know what they're going to get in that shitty job, but they don't know what the options are going to be out of it, and they're too scared to go. So their brain, because we're wired to survive, not to thrive, if we are surviving, we're not going to do anything different. And in fact, the biggest place where stress is anywhere something new comes down the pipe. As a leader, when I would have to change the workflow with people, I would see some of them, like, their face would just instantly just get saturated with distress, just like overflowing with distress and just freaking out, like, oh my God, you mean I have to ask the questions in this order now? And that's all it would be. It would be like, hey, let's put this here and this here.
It's just like a different neurological pathway.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, with our brain and trying to heal from mental illness or even just like stress, trying to have a better mindset where you're thinking more positively every day, your brain is automatically going to fight against that because it's not the normal path. It's not the same grooved in drive that it takes every single day. So when something new is thrown in and you have to take the off-road path, like your brain just instantly goes, whoa, I'm not liking this at all. I want to go back. I want to go back.
And that's why, and I think you would agree, because one of the things you talked about with your health promotions is, getting some sort of curriculum in school to teach the kids these things, to teach children before they have 18 years of repeatedly going through this vicious cycle, before it gets so embedded within them and who they are and as a person and their fabric of their being. We give them the chance to develop the understanding, the vocabulary, and the knowledge on not just how to identify what's going on, but how to place it and how to overcome it.
Right.
And when you were talking about, I'd never thought about that. Until we had that conversation where you were explaining to me the significance of getting that in there for adolescents and getting it in for children, so they can at least have the vocabulary to be able to identify negative and positive and all of that. My brain, literally, for whatever reason, although I understood a lot more than I realized, looking back, I understood way more than I gave myself credit for as a child. I didn't think that kids were in a they had the capacity to truly understand in a way that things could be changed. And then you're like, well, that's why you teach them things in a way. Like, you're not going to give them...
They're still going to have all of those feelings and all of those, like, internal experiences.
Right.
They just don't know that it's
I didn't know normal. That I was like, oh, okay, so you mean, like, kids can actually pick up on this stuff? And you're like, yeah, well, if you teach them away, now obviously you can't throw 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson at them, or the history and origins of consciousness. Like, you can't throw those things at them.
But it's like Virginia, for example, they are one of the first states to resemble implementing a mental health curriculum from kindergarten to high school. And it's not like this one class where you sit down and you talk about your feelings. It's integrated into the system where, kindergarten through first grade, you're just identifying feelings and knowing that it's okay. And knowing that if you're mad, that's not the end of the world. There's just different ways to handle it.
Shout out Daniel the Tiger.
Right? Love him. And then as you go through middle school, it's talking about communication skills and how to just conceptualize what you're feeling and being able to empathize with your peers that they're going through the same thing, and knowing the impact of words. And then high school, just like taking it one step further.
It's, I mean, like when we were listening to another podcast that had someone on there. Okay, all right, I was not trying to say it because I know people are very opinionated about this man's podcast, but we were listening to the Joe Rogan Experience, particularly the episode, who had he had Jewel on.
Oh, I wanted to bring this up. I'm so happy that you are.
And not only did I learn things that I had no idea, like at all. I knew her from her music, but like the way that she would communicate things and explain things and break things down in a very simple way was very profound to me, because I'm like, okay, as she's talking, I'm like, oh, she has a background in like psychology. She's got degrees and things like that. And come to find out, no, she actually was homeless at 15 and has,
came from a homestead.
Yeah, like no formal education in that sense. But she had to learn how to fix herself. So I connected with her in that capacity. Well, I related to her. I can't say connected, but I related to her in that capacity because, we both did this self-education from a point of how do I fix who I am. And then it got to a point where she was so good at it and she saw a true need where now she has a program that she's implementing in school.
The first person of... what's the word I'm looking? Just of status.
Yeah.
Who I've heard
Celebrity.
talk about implementing a mental health curriculum into the schools, and she's doing. I can't remember what state that she said that she was working in.
I'm drawing a blank.
It's really hard to infiltrate the education system if you don't know. You have to go through a lot of hoops.
Yeah, and you have the same roadblocks that you have. I mean, in anything that I hate to be this guy, and I promise I'm not some type of anarchist, but any type of government-run organization or department, it is significantly harder to get anything accomplished because there's 37 checks and balances that need to take place. And why that is, I'm not going to talk about. I don't want to get into, but at the end of the day, it makes actual progress and change very, very hard. So the simple fact that she was able to, be it because of her celebrity or because of her money or because of the quality of the curriculum she was implementing, which I believe it's probably some sort of combination, but mainly the quality of the curriculum, because it doesn't matter how famous you are. If what you're teaching is garbage, it's not going to make it.
Right.
But the fact that she was able to get behind enemy lines,
right?
Because it's a war. It's a war. It is, like, it really is. And like, public schools were created to, in the same time as the Industrial Revolution, they're designed around assembly lines. There's next to no benefit of being in the same class with people that are your age when you all learn on different levels.
Right.
And to consume information and retain it and understand it differently. But yeah, the simple fact that she was able to get in there and really hopefully make a difference. Like, I'm going to look more into it and find out and see if there's any way that we can connect with her, because I would be,
so it's up north, and
I want to say New York.
She's working with English classes. So it's just in the English classes.
Yeah.
It's just within, like, the middle and high school level, but it's a start. And seeing the success from
vocabulary,
seeing the success from what she's doing, I'm just hoping that the rest of the states will follow.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But and all, as with any movement, as with any revolution, you have to have more than one. So, like, I watched this TED Talk where they showed, it's pretty popular, it's got a few million views, but how to start a movement. And it was this person who was at, like, a park, maybe there was a concert or something, and this person just starts dancing. And they're dancing, like, it's on, like, a big grassy hill, and they're at this park and everything, and he's dancing 30, 45 seconds, maybe a minute, I don't know exactly how long, and then one other person comes up and starts dancing. And because it was no longer one crazy person, it was two people dancing, a third person felt comfortable enough to come up and dance. And then next thing you know, there's an entire crowd of people dancing because one person started dancing. It takes one person to start it, it takes one person to follow. And then that third person, if you can get to that third person at that tipping point, that's how things can become a movement. So if you get 3 states, you get one state to produce positive results, and then you get one more to follow, and then that third state comes in, within a few short years, most other states are going to follow suit.
Right.
It's not something as political and polarizing as some of the topics that are divided amongst the states. It's education, and I think most of the states are at a point now where they recognize that the education system's broken. But yeah, it's very exciting to see that there's people doing it, because until you brought it up, I didn't know it existed until Jewel brought up what she's doing. I had no idea that was another person.
To see that it's actually a conversation and that we are seeing progress in the movement is very reassuring and inspiring, and I feel hopeful, and I'm excited to see what we can do just ourselves with this little stress movement program that we're creating, and then going from there, how we can impact the community. And my ultimate goal right now is to focus on the Florida education system. And,
right.
You gotta start off in your county. You gotta talk to them first and jump through all the hoops, and then you can go counties over and then infiltrate the whole state. Like,
right.
It's a whole process, but
so why
excited.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we share a little bit, give a couple of, like, tips that we can use in stressful moments, just like how in real time, how we can help keep that check and stress. Like, let's just offer a little bit of that. Because we've done a lot of talking about several different things. We've shared information, but I also want to give them some things that they can apply in real time. And I'll offer one, and then you can offer one.
Okay.
My favorite is having a physical object to help you can't see me if you're just listening, but I am pulling out of my pocket my sunstone. um, is to have an object in your possession at all times that when you notice that stress, and it takes a little bit of time to get to a point where you notice you're stressing or you're beginning to stress, and just pull it out and just kind of play with it, and rub it in my fingers, kind of throw it back and forth between my hands or whatever, spin it on my desk, whatever I'm doing. um, it does a couple of things. One, it breaks your thought pattern because you're doing something different. You go from being stressed and hyperfixating on that issue that's causing you the stress to, oh, this rock's actually kind of smooth, and you can feel where it's cracked a little bit, and then there's a chip in it up at the top, and I could rub that's rough right there, and oh, well, here it's shaped this way, but then it gets fatter, and your brain just kind of gets to go off, and it breaks that thought pattern. It also, for me at least, it's a reminder, hey, be present in the moment. Because what I've learned is most of our stresses stem from anxiety, thinking of the future, or depression, thinking about the past. We get depressed thinking about past situations, and we develop that anxiety looking at the future, and those are big stressors. So if we can just be in the moment and doing that, getting to there through the sunstone or whatever that object may be. I know some people have just a pebble, some people have a bracelet, some people have a paper clip. It doesn't have to be anything specific or in particular, but that to me is one of the easiest things you can do, because if you can remember to take your sunstone, in this case, and put it in your pocket every day, and be able to remember, hey, wait, I'm stressing, I'm supposed to do something when I'm stressing, oh yeah, my sunstone, it really helps change everything. Yeah. In that present moment, and in return, as a result of that, you're less stressed for a shorter period of time.
Right. I'm excited. Type 2. Basically, when you get really stressed out, you start to feel yourself sweat, you feel your heart rate increasing, get a little rosy cheek, dry mouth. However your body experiences stress, you are having that influx of stress hormones, the adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol. So the quickest way to bring yourself back down is through activating the vagus nerve, which basically goes from your brainstem all throughout your body. And the two greatest stress relievers for just like normal stress, but also for anxiety and depression, like the clinical diagnosis, is breathing, like actually going through breathing techniques. And I know that's so hard when you're starting off. Just remember that your brain is going to like fight against these new techniques, but if you continue to practice them throughout time, it's going to get a lot easier, and you're going to see the results a lot faster than you do from that first initial try. But one of my favorite breathing techniques is taking a breath in for four beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, holding for 6, and then breathing out for 7. That automatically connects with the vagus nerve and slows your heart rate down. It's like a trick on the body. And then also saying affirmations and saying them out loud. You don't even have to say affirmations if you don't want to. Humming or singing is going to do the same thing, because with the vagus nerve, this part of the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms you down after you are activated in this fight or flight, this stressful situation, starting from the brainstem of the vagus nerve, your vocal cords are right there, literally at the start of it. So if you're able to say, I am safe, I am secure, I am in control of my life, whatever resonates with you in an affirmation, being able to say that out loud, being able to activate your vocal cords, you are automatically your stress levels are going to start to come down. But humming and singing can do the same thing. And that's also kind of like another reason why they say that crying whenever you're stressed out, or like whenever you're experiencing a very heightened emotion, that also helps, because the activation of those vocal cords and the breathing that comes in with like the crying. So yeah, getting off on a little bit of a tangent. This is my favorite stuff. Yeah. But yeah, just taking a moment to be conscious with your breathing, whether it's the 4, 6, 7, or there's also the box breathing where you just breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 4, hold for 4, breathe in. You literally imagine the square and just the 4s. Or some type of affirmation, saying out loud, humming or singing or talking it out with a loved one,
Right.
Just
Absolutely.
activating those vocal cords. And then last one, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. One turn to the
Also,
four. I love it.
Writing things down. If you're really stressed out, and this is something that can be very quick, but writing out the top things that you're stressed out about, and then looking at it, and then crossing out the things that you cannot control, and then just focusing on what you can. That just, instead of catastrophizing in your brain, the rumination that occurs with stress, you're able to see exactly what you can do to help yourself. Whereas like in your mind, you can just get so lost.
And I think when you write the things down and you cross out the things, like, it's a physical, you're physically acting out the mental reality that there's certain things you can't do anything about.
Right.
So to me, if, like, let's just say my boss is being mean. All right, my boss is being a prick. All right, my boss's attitude is what I'm going to write out. There is literally nothing I can do about my boss's attitude. There's a lot of things that I can do to produce better results potentially, or things of that nature, but if my boss doesn't like me, or that's just how my boss talks to people, and whatever it may be, there's nothing I can do about it. So me scratching that off is a physical and visual, what's the word I'm looking for? Trigger almost, to allow my mind to let it go. It's like, hey, it's acknowledging the reality of it, because like you said, you can think things, but when you speak them, there's so much more power to them. When you write them down, there's so much more power to them. And if you're going through the act of writing down, this is one of my problems, and put that line through it, there's nothing I can do about it. That gives you the power back. That's you saying, I can't control this other person. I'm not going to bother with it. I'm not going to allow myself to be worried with it. Is it that simple? No. But is that kind of what takes place? Yes. And that's why, writing down, if you have a lot on your mind before bed, if you want a quick pro tip for sleeping, if you got a lot on your mind, just jot down 3 to 5 things that you have to do tomorrow. That way you can get off your mind. Put it on a legal pad or a little piece of paper by your bed, on your nightstand, or at the table, or whatever. Right. And just like if you want to have a productive day, write down all the things you need to do, and then pick the 3 most important things, and don't do anything else until they're done in that order. But one other thing I wanted to touch on, you talked about how when you first start doing it, your body's gonna not want to do it. Your brain's gonna tell you no, completely reject it. I can vouch for that, because sitting in my room in silence and trying to meditate, listening to Tibetan monks' bowls, and having incense, and trying to follow the breath, or whatever I was doing at that time when I first started, was some of the most awkward experiences of my life. Doing these breathing techniques was incredibly awkward. I used to, at the hospital in Tallahassee, I used to, every hour I had an alarm that went off, and I would sit in my office, and I was very fortunate to be in a position where I could do this, so I took advantage of it. I'd sit in my office, and every time that alarm would go off, once an hour, I would spend 3 to 5 minutes just doing some slow inhales, like a 4-second inhale, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale. And as I'm inhaling, I would think about all the things I need to do in the next hour. I'd be like, okay, inhale, we're going to focus on this task. We're going to have this conversation. We're going to do this thing. And I would hold it, and I would just kind of let my mind go blank. And then when I would exhale, I would let go of all the stress that I'd built up over the last hour. And when I would do that, doing it over each hour, different people would walk by and see me doing it, and they'd be like, Travis is nuts. What is he doing? Because there was times where I would say release as I was exhaling. I would be like, release. So people would walk by, and like I'm in like doing that number, and I've got the frequencies playing in the Tibetan monk bowls and all of that. I'm doing the works, and then I would get up to get my blood flowing. I do jumping jacks or air squats or push-ups. And it was very awkward for me to sit there and do push-ups with someone who would just stand at my door and wait for me to get done to talk to me. But the reason I brought that up is to tell you that who cares if it's awkward or uncomfortable, because once you do it, you're going to experience the difference. And at that point, it's, to me, I feel bad for hearing people huff and puff now. I'm like, just take some breaths, homie. Like, just breathe, my dude. Yeah. But it's normal to stew in your stress and misery, and it's uncommon. That's why it's awkward. So just push through it. And, you know, as with anything new, that it's going to be uncertainty and the stress, and you're going to be like, am I doing it right or wrong? Let me tell you something. When it comes to breathing techniques, there's 1,000 different breathing techniques, and there's 100 guides for each breathing technique. So find the ones that work best for you. You have to do your own research on that particular thing. But, you know, the ones that she offered, they work great. They're proven to be effective. So keep that in mind. It's okay that you're going to be awkward. In fact, the more awkward and uncomfortable you feel, the closer to the right direction you're going.
Right. And I think I want to end off on this note. Yes, all of these techniques are clinically proven to help reduce stress, but it's kind of like with the medicine, like SSRIs and like anxiety medicine and stuff like that. It's not one size fits all. You are gonna have to go through that comfortable experience of sitting down, trying to meditate, trying to take control of your breathing, but don't be afraid to try different techniques and different avenues of breathing or yoga or journaling, because you will find something that fits for you. And if it doesn't fit for you, don't be discouraged. Just try something different.
Absolutely. Very well put. Very well put. Yeah, so I know we just took an hour and 15 plus minutes of your time.
I think this is your longest.
Yeah, it is, and I couldn't be happier. It went by in a flash. So first of all, thank you for doing this with me. I hope we get to do many more together.
Oh, of course.
Secondly, thank you all for your time. It's always appreciated. And on that note, we'll see you next time. Y'all take care.